You were talking also about that she took drugs while she were breastfeeding.
Right. That moment that I talk about where I actually saw her doing cocaine, I asked her, please don't go home and breastfeed the children. Please don't go home and breastfeed the boys. I got a phone call and he was like, Dad, Mom's gonna die.
So you talk about substance abuse?
Yes, 100%.
Wir treffen den Ex-Mann von Britney Spears in seiner Wahlheimat Hawaii.
I had to put my family first over everything else, and I feel like being quiet and raising them as much as I could out of the spotlight, it really gave them a chance at a normal life.
Did you talk to Jaden and Preston before you published the book? Did you talk about writing the book?
Yes, so I did. And then when I decided that I wanted to write the book, which was a long time ago, we had conversations about it.
2 Jahre ist er Mitte der 2000er mit dem damaligen Weltstar Britney Spears verheiratet. Sie bekommen 2 Söhne, Sean Preston und Jaden James. Federline, heute 47, sagt, er mache sich große Sorgen um seine Ex-Frau.
I think that anybody watching the situation for the last 3 years since she's been out of the conservatorship, I really think that you can see what's going on, right? I mean, just from her social media. And I mean, she needs help. And there's no question about that. And we've tried everything. I mean, we've tried. If anybody knows anything, is that we tried doing things privately. We tried doing all of these things for so long, 20 years. I kept my mouth shut trying to help a situation, and that didn't help. It didn't do anything. So now, you know, I feel like this is kind of like my final cry for help.
Nach der Scheidung verliert Britney Spears 2008 das Sorgerecht. Der Grund? Nervenzusammenbrüche und mutmaßlicher Drogenkonsum. Kevin Federline sagt, im Moment habe er selbst keinen Kontakt zu Britney. Auch die beiden Söhne hätten jahrelang kein Interesse an ihrer Mutter gezeigt, bis zu diesem Jahr.
Just in this year, one of my sons went and saw her for the first time in 5 years. He only went over there once, and he's terrified to go back over there again because of what he's witnessed. The other one of my sons has visited her quite a few times over the last year, and you know, I got a phone call 4 or 5 months ago, and I was still finishing the book, and he was like, Dad, Mom's gonna die. Like, I mean, in those words. And that really got me to switch gears, and that's when I wrote this. That's when I came with the plea, because what's going on right now is really, really scary. You know, we've seen it so many times with Hollywood stars, and I don't want her to become one of those people. And that's why I'm out here doing this, is I'm trying to save the mother of my kids.
So you talk about substance abuse?
Yes, 100%. Substance abuse for sure.
Warum schreibt Kevin Federline jetzt dieses Buch? Veröffentlicht so intime Details über Britney Spears. Wirklich nur, um seiner Ex-Frau zu helfen?
If this was about money, and I've said this quite a few times over the last week, right? I could have cashed in on this for millions of dollars years ago when it was the top of the headlines. I mean, I had offers from all over the place to come out with this story, and I didn't, right? I mean, and if really, like, you know, people talk about my child support and all this, I'll say this because I haven't said this before. If it was about money, my son Jaden, right? I was still getting child support a year ago. My son Jaden wasn't supposed to graduate until June. I stopped getting child support almost a year to this day, right? My son Jaden graduated early because we put him in summer school. He finished high school early. If it was really about money, I would have dragged that out all the way until the end, right? But I didn't. I wanted my son to graduate. I wanted my son to go live his life.
Sean Preston ist heute 20, Jaden James 19. Erst Jahre später haben sie ihrem Vater erzählt, was sie mit ihrer Mutter Britney Spears alles durchmachen mussten.
I started hearing stories from my sons when they were teenagers, and you know, things that I think they were afraid to tell me before because they don't want their mom getting in trouble and all of that, and when they were young. And so in the book I describe an incident that my sons talk about, waking up in the middle of the night and their mom standing in their doorway with a knife in her hand and seeing them awake, like, oh, you're awake, and kind of padding off with this knife in her hand. You know, more than one knife thing that I talk about in my book, about how she's like slashed up the seats in her Mercedes, you know, and things like that. So I mean, it's at what point does it become so dangerous that you really don't feel comfortable around it?
Schon vor der Geburt passieren schlimme Dinge. Britney, damals auf der absoluten Überholspur, weltweiter Superstar, scheint die Bodenhaftung verloren zu haben.
That moment that I talk about where I actually saw her doing cocaine at my album release party, both of our sons had already been born. Jaden was 6 weeks old. This was October 31st, 2006. So Jaden was 6 weeks old. Preston was a little bit over a year. And I showed up to my album release party, which I didn't think that she was going to be at, because she said she was going to stay home with the kids, and I was okay with that. I had a full day of press and all of those things, right? And I walk into my dressing room, and that's where I saw her, and I saw her doing cocaine. And so, you know, and I'm not the one, like, if you want to party, cool, like, you know, that part didn't bother me, but it kept playing in my head, like, she's breastfeeding the kids at this time, so when we go down to the actual party, I sit down next to her, and I kept playing this over in my head, like, what is going on, what's gonna happen? And I lean over to her, and I ask her, please don't go home and breastfeed the children. Please don't go home and breastfeed the boys. And immediately she gave me this just evil look, got up, threw a drink in my face, and took off. That was 5 days or 6 days before she filed for divorce. So that was pretty much the incident that led to her filing for divorce.
Und nach der Scheidung wird es nicht besser, erzählt Kevin Federline uns.
Britney, Paris Hilton, Lindsay Lohan, they were partying together even when the kids were around. Is that true? Was this like so?
Yeah. So there's an instance in the book where I talk about getting a phone call with all of them in the background, you know, asking me to come over or things like that, and I could tell they were completely, you know, tossed. And I could hear my kids in the background crying, and you know, I mean, that's just shocking, right? And this was like literally within the first couple of months after the divorce happened.
Auf unsere Anfrage zu Kevins Vorwürfen hat Britney Spears bzw. ihr Management bisher nicht reagiert. Aber auf Instagram schreibt sie vor wenigen Tagen das zu Federlines Biografieankündigung.
Glaubt mir, diese ganzen Lügen in dem Buch zahlen direkt auf sein Bankkonto ein. Und ich bin die Einzige, die hier wirklich verletzt wird.
Hat Federline damals die ganzen Red Flags, die ja da waren, nicht gesehen oder nicht sehen wollen?
I kind of brushed some of these things off because it's like, look, she became famous when she was 16. There's people following her around all the time. The pressures of fame and the pressures of having to be this perfect person and be on stage and do all these things. Those were a lot of the excuses that I said to myself with why there were so many ups and downs, with why there were so many different things that I actually wound up not questioning because of that, right? And it wasn't, you know, until like the later part of our relationship, and I don't really know that it, you know, I think having 2 kids within a year's time was really hard for her, and I understand like postpartum and things like that could play a factor in some of that stuff.
Der Umzug hier nach Hawaii sei für ihn und seine Kinder die Rettung gewesen. Sean Preston und Jaden James leiden heute noch unter der Situation, sagt Federline. Er versuche alles, um sie zu beschützen.
And I know that they're not going on their mom's page and looking at it because they don't want to see that. So I think it's definitely have a lasting effect, for sure. I mean, especially Preston, you know, he's struggled with a lot of different things with, you know, and I talk about, you know, what he's had to go through in my book.
How much time is left?
I mean, that's the whole thing. It's like you never know, right? I wake up every day, and I've said this a bunch over the last week. I wake up every day, you know, terrified that my sons are gonna have to go through the unimaginable. I don't like saying death because then it's like you're really having to face it. So I think of it as the unimaginable because I don't want them left holding the pieces of that, because then that could ruin their lives, and they deserve so much more than that.
Kevin Federline sagt, die Uhr tickt. Es sei 11:05. Es müsse sich dringend was ändern, damit Britney noch lange da ist, auch für ihre gemeinsamen Söhne.